1. Recently my family and I have been ordering a lot of things online. We like to start Christmas shopping early, and I just enjoy doing some online shopping when I get paid. We've gotten a package every day or every few days for a little over 2 weeks now. So I came home from school on the second day of Package Christmas and went out onto our porch to get the mail and any packages or boxes that had been delivered that day. I was super pumped to see that my loot crate had come in for the month. If you don't know what loot crate is, it's a box that you get every month that is full of nerdy things to that month's theme. So I rushed inside and threw the mail on the table to see what my loot crate had in store for me this month. I flipped it over to find the part where the flap is taped down was already cut. At first I thought it was a mistake that happened either at Loot Crate headquarters or in the mailing truck. But then I realized that it had a clean straight cut, like it was cut with a knife or something. I opened my loot crate expecting it to be empty, but to my surprise everything was just moved around like someone had just gone through the stuff. I even made sure that everything that was on the little book that comes in the loot crate that describes what each item is was in the box. I didn't think much more of it until the next package arrived. I came home from school again and did the usual routine. This time the package was for my mom. Knowing it was a Christmas present, I just put it on the table and didn't think about it. When she got home, she picked up the package and called for my brother and I to come into the dining room. We walked in there, and she started to question us about who opened her package. My brother and I looked at each other confused. We'd both been in my room playing Minecraft together since we got home. Then I remembered my loot crate. I told my mom about what happened with my package. She opened hers to look in it, and the same thing happened. Everything was just moved around, but according to her receipt, everything she ordered was in there and intact. At this point you think we would tell the mail people to put the packages somewhere else. But we were dumb and just figured some weirdo or druggie was going through our mail. We hadn't ordered drugs or dildos or anything, so no harm, no foul. Now this third package is where it gets weird. It was one of my packages, so I got to open it. Of course, the tape was already cut, so I just rolled my eyes and opened it. And that's when I saw it. A dead bird on top of my new leggings that I ordered. I threw it down and called my mom for 2 reasons. 1, I had no clue what to do with the bird, which looked like it had been mauled by an animal. And 2, I had to tell her some creep is now putting a little something extra in our packages. She told me to just throw the bird over our fence and wash my leggings thoroughly. From that day on, we got a little something extra in our packages. We have gotten a used condom, 2 used bars of soap, another dead bird, this one looking like it's been dead for over a month, and just a lot of trash and sticks from our yard and other people's yards. We even got the neighbor's mail in one of our packages. After a bit we got sick of it and called the cops. They said they couldn't do anything because this person wasn't threatening us, wasn't causing any damage or harm, and we couldn't identify the person. This has been going on for 2 weeks now. Today was actually the day we got our neighbor's mail. So, creepy person who keeps giving us surprises in our mail, could you please stop? Update. I've read all of the comments and actually feel dumb for not putting up a camera, but thankfully there is no need. When we returned our neighbor's mail, we warned them about this crazy person leaving little surprises in our packages. They thanked us for warning them and said they would keep an eye out. Well, they were outside feeding their cats and saw someone crouched over our packages. They remember what we said and called the police and my father. A police officer was patrolling the area, so he was able to get to my house pretty fast and found a woman going through our packages. She was, of course, arrested. When my father got to our house, they had already loaded up the woman into the police car. Come to find out, it was one of the local crack addicts, and she was tweaked out the entire time. The police told my father they had found razors in her pocket and in the package. which was my package. I'm just glad they were able to finally arrest this lady before I got cut with razors or found something worse in my package. 2. So, this happened at Christmas a couple of years ago, when I was spending the holidays with my parents and little brother, along with my cousins, aunts, and uncles. We live in a suburb in Ontario, but we were venturing out into the woods for Christmas, an idea that my parents had had for a while. They always loved the idea of being out in a hunting cabin during a Christmas with their families. I'm a 22-year-old female, but at the time, I was newly 18 and my little brother Tom was 11. We're really close and do everything together. We also had a dog, a German Shepherd called Trigger, who came along for the ride too. He's a real softie, but can be really overprotective, especially of my brother Tom. Anyway, we left from our house on Christmas Eve about 2 p.m. and climbed into our dad's truck, filled with all of our stuff and presents for his extended family. Tom and I were really excited, winding each other up, and my parents were having friendly conversation as we moved along the road. We arrived at the village near the cabins we were staying in, and caught up with my dad's sister, Billy, along with her husband and 3 kids. They didn't converse for long, but Billy was a bit unsure of where to go from the village to get out to the cabins, so my dad helped her out by writing down the directions. We soon got back on our way and arrived at the cabins at around 4 p.m. There were a cluster of them, sort of spaced out around the woods. Each family had a cabin each, and there was one where everyone could meet up with a pool table, a swimming pool, and all sorts. It was kind of a place we could all just chill together and enjoy each other's company. Anyway, the weather was already really cold when we arrived and the snow was falling all around us. So as me and my brother unpacked our things into the cabin and settled in for the night, my dad started a fire whilst my mum made our dinner. It was great. The Christmas decorations were already up, and we played a few board games as the night got darker. Dad, Tom, and I decided, before coming on the trip, that we'd go hunting sometime, so we planned to go out the next day. I'd been a few times with my dad, but this was Tom's first time. He was only there to watch us, though, as he was too young to shoot. It reached about 10 p.m., and my brother and I were getting a bit tired, so we decided to go to bed. My dad kept his rifles in a bag, which he kept under the bed I was sleeping on. He usually kept it in a locked box, but thought there was no point since we were going hunting the next morning. Tom and I were sharing a room at the end of the cabin, facing a flowing river. The view was beautiful. Tom and I fell asleep with our dog, Trigger, lying at the bottom of Tom's bed. Now this is when things begin to get creepy. It was about 3 a.m. when I awoke to Trigger growling. I didn't find this particularly unusual, because my dad suffers from insomnia. So sometimes when he can't sleep, he sits in our sitting room at home and watches some TV. Like I said, Trigger is extremely overprotective and growls at any noise he hears. But that's when I noticed that there was no light coming from under my door. My dad never just sits in the dark. I whispered to Trigger, telling him to be quiet as Tom slept, but his growling soon turned to barking, which woke Tom up. He asked me what was going on, but I said Trigger must have heard some deer or something outside. After all, we were in the middle of the woods. Suddenly, our bedroom door swung open, and the light switch was turned on. My eyes stung as I tried to focus on whoever it was at the door. It was my dad. "Were you two laughing just now?" he asked as I turned to look at Tom. His eyes wide and his face pale. "No," I replied, as he moved over towards our curtain, pulling it back as he looked out into the pitch-black wilderness. "What are you looking at?" Tom asked us. Our dad closed the curtains again. "Nothing. Just go back to sleep." I was kind of creeped out that my dad didn't say anything about what he was doing. But he turned our light off, and we tried falling back asleep again. Of course I couldn't. I was wide awake for the rest of the night, flinching at pretty much every noise. It was about 4:30 a.m. when I finally drifted off. But it must have been moments later. I heard strange crunching noises coming from outside our window. I was sure this wasn't some sort of animal. It sounded like footsteps. I had this overwhelming feeling of fear, and I pulled the covers over my face, sweat beginning to cover my forehead. I then heard a faint tapping on our window, which lasted for a good few minutes. I was so petrified I couldn't move. Trigger was awake by this point, and I saw his face turned towards the window, his ears pointed and listening intently. The tapping started again, but louder this time, causing Trigger to bare his teeth. What happened next was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me.
"I know you're in there, little guy,"
this deep husky voice whispered as a horrible shiver went down my spine.
"Why don't you come out here and play with me?"
Initially, I was filled with rage. I thought that it was bound to be one of my cousins playing a stupid prank on us. So I leaned forward and peeked through a gap in the curtain, ready to give them hell for scaring the shit out of us. But standing there wasn't any of our cousins. It was a creepy old man who was around 60. His hair matted and his clothes looked dirty and ancient. He was stroking the window with his hands, breathing on it as he spoke. I went into protective mode. I didn't know what else to do, so I grabbed my dad's hunting rifle from under my bed and pulled the curtain back. "Hell out of here, or I'll shoot." I felt adrenaline rushing through me as the creepy man's eyes widened and the most terrifying smile appeared across his face. Trigger began barking louder than I have ever heard him bark. My parents obviously heard the commotion and came running through to our room, turning the light on. My mum screamed as she saw the old man through the window, Trigger fiercely continuing to bark at the man. My dad yelled at the man, telling him that the police were on their way, but the man legged it back into the woods. Tom was petrified, but I was more angry than anything else. How could some sicko do this? I was just extremely glad I had the rifle. The cops caught the guy just a few minutes later and arrested him. I found out a couple days later that the creepy man was homeless and living in the woods, and he was suffering from a lot of mental issues. It scares me to death to think about what could have happened to my brother if I hadn't been there. We spent the remainder of Christmas Day at the cabin, but we stayed in our Aunt Billy's cabin overnight. There was no way we were sleeping on our own after what happened. We went home first thing on Boxing Day and never looked back. My dad only told me the other day that he knew someone was hanging around our cabin, so he intentionally left the rifle under my bed in case I had to use it in self-defense. He did that because he didn't want to scare any of us. He called the cops after he heard the guy laughing outside of his bedroom window, singing nursery rhymes. He knew it would take a while for the cops to reach the cabin. So safe to say that was the scariest experience of my life. So weird, creepy guy in the middle of the woods. Please, please, let's not meet again. 3. Does anyone remember a website app that used to be named My Yearbook? I was actually introduced to that site by my mom when I was around 15 or so. It's been a long time. Well, later on it was changed to some other name site, and then finally to Meet Me. Something with the owners, unimportant stuff to this. So I used to use it on and off. I've met some nice people on there, friends, short relationships. Never anything serious. Mostly LDRs, but this is not about some crazy ex from there that scared me senseless. Nope. So as I mentioned, I used to be on and off this site after it was turned into an app for mobile. What normally made me leave was the pulls and pulls of thirsty ignoramuses that daily did. What would bring me back each time, sadly, was boredom, and the possible hopes of just finding someone neat to be friends with. My last time I used it might have pushed me away from it for good, though. One of the features on Meet Me is the location option. You click the box, and it'll show you who's in your area, whilst telling others you're in their area, etc., etc. I normally had this off. Reason being, I don't quite like the people where I live. Not all are bad, of course. I'm friends with a few guys that live some blocks from me and so on. Acquaintances here and there. So one night, as I was scrolling through the feed of people within my city, reading very unintelligent statuses and making faces at more than inappropriate pictures, I decided, why not? I'm curious. I clicked the share my location box and refreshed, posted a status about some anime I watched, and set my phone down. It would be a couple of minutes of just my music and my pencil making scribble noises on my paper as I was drawing at the time. I hear the alert go off on my phone, a little dinging sound that actually made me jump a little. I was so focused on my doodle. At first I paid no mind to it. I never jumped for Meet Me notifications since they were usually likes from some random status or comment from some idiot I could care less for, and I would just delete the content later. A routine I picked up, unfortunately. This time, though, I did not put the phone back down when I took a glance. It wasn't a like, nor a comment, nor an admirer. It was a message. And not just another "you're cute" or "wanna insert something gross here" message. Instead, it was something that unnerved me for some reason. Hey, you're my neighbor. I see you all the time. Yeah, not too weird at first. I had turned on my location after all. I just didn't expect to get someone so close. Especially since my only two neighbors on the sides of me were an elder Asian couple whom I was more than positive did not own any kind of source of internet. I only knew this, though, because I had gone to their home a few times because the tiny wife needed help when the husband was out. And the other neighbor was this middle-aged, racist, possibly crackhead man. So naturally, my first thought was, ew, that creep has a Meet Me? Then again, Meet Me is full of creeps, so it wasn't too much of a surprise. Me being messaged by him was the horror of a surprise. Deeply disturbed, I did not click the message. I simply set my phone back down, after giving one of those very awkward body twitches that make you look funny for a second or two. Not even a minute after I set it down, I received another message. This guy was already getting on my nerves. I picked up the phone again. It was indeed another message from the man. You walk with some big chick, your sister, right? And some dude lives with you too. I see him all the time on a bike. Okay, I was getting really freaked out. Very quickly. My first thought was to go into the messages, click on his profile and block him. On Meet Me, you have to go to the person's profile to block them, which also sucked because it would then notify the person that you viewed their profile. Would show them your picture and all. I left the message open for a bit, unsure of what to do. Blocking was definitely what I wanted to do. Replying was the last thing. But upon seeing that I was physically online and viewing the message, the ellipses motion appeared, and he began typing again. He began going on about what he would see at my house, which, in honesty, wasn't much. He went on to describe me and my sister, the woman he was sure was my mother, who he was very positive went to church, judging from her attire. I had a dog who barked a lot, but apparently matched me very good. He went so far as to describe how I dressed so differently and why I never stood with a style. Example, one day I would leave my house and I would appear to be male. On another day I would be dressed as female, some days in between. But upon finding my profile, he was very sure that I was indeed female. So why was I trying to be male so often? I finally gained the nerve, was also irked, very much so, to message back. I shouldn't have. The messaging went back and forth of me explaining all his curiosities. And at first I thought perhaps this wasn't all that bad of an idea. The man saw something he didn't quite understand, so I merely indulged him and gave him knowledge on something he didn't know but wanted to understand, if he could. It went downhill when I revealed I was same-sex interested. This seemed to fire him up and anger him. He went on for paragraphs and paragraphs, which I might add suddenly gave him very good grammar about how I shouldn't be doing such things. I was made the way I was born the way I was meant to be. There was a better plan for me, and that was why I was born with my biological format, and so forth, and to marry the same gender was a vile sin, and I would sadden my parents. This guy actually started to sound a lot like my dad in that aspect. I began to ignore the messages, but screenshot them and quickly sent them to my sister. Being the snoop that she is, she went to investigating who this was, looking up his name on Google and even Facebook. Finding his Facebook didn't do much though, due to the fact that there really wasn't anything on his Facebook. The name he had on Meet Me was the same as it was on Facebook, along with the same picture. The conclusion was that this could have been a fake profile, and this person was messing with me. But I could not think of a single being who would wish to freak me out so badly. This guy getting mad at me for who I was, though, was not the part that scared me, though. Call me paranoid or just straight up baby, but this guy could have possibly been bipolar. His messages went from creepy, somewhat kind, to irked, angry, and then all of a sudden, so since we're friends now and know some about each other, how about we hang out sometime? My response to this was a flat-out no, and that I just didn't go out as much, which was true, after this. Again, he was mad. Don't be a prude about it, I see you out all the time. If you see me outside, say hello. Or if I see you first, I'll say hello. We can shoot the shit for a while, and I'll be on my way. Sound cool, girly? That last phrase was what got me, and I didn't know how to respond. I felt concerned. And while this was merely on the web, I felt threatened and very unsafe. In the midst of all the messages, he had revealed he only lived a few houses down from me, stating that if he looked out of his room window, he could see my house at the corner. There is in fact a home just across the way from my home that, if you look out from my mother's room window, you can have a perfect view into another window, just some yards away. As best I could, I eased out of the conversation, kept the screenshots in case anything else happened, and closed Meet Me out. I was mildly disturbed, creeped out, scared, but it didn't stop me from leaving my home. At least, for a few days it didn't. That weekend after my sister came over to visit, and we left to go hang out at a community center, just so we didn't have to be inside all weekend. As we were leaving, we passed the house I was sure was the guy's house. And sure enough, a man was standing outside the door, watching us as we walked back. He didn't say anything, just watched. At the end of the block, I could clearly hear someone shout my name. Confused, I turned to look around, as did my sister. Nothing. The calling of my name would happen for a good week or so before I stopped going out much alone. The man I suspected to be my Meet Me buddy would often be outside with a group of friends. He would nod to me and I would merely return a confused to him. I felt like I was indirectly being stalked. But I also felt like he knew he had scared me. I'm not the tallest person or the strongest looking. I'm rather small, actually. I have a good head on my shoulders. But at the back of my mind, this man scared the daylights out of me. This happened a few years ago. 3, I want to say. And I haven't seen him much. nor have I heard my name being called around the neighbourhood when I go for walks. I'm on high alert when I do, and I won't even put my headphones in. And since then, I haven't used Meet Me. I haven't even thought of it until just the other day, when I saw a group of guys hanging out in front of that house. Even now, that thought scares me, and makes me not want to leave my home. At least, not alone. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 134. Ah yes, Meet Me. I think I'm still getting messages from them, trying to entice me to come back to the site. Of course, I don't think I've used it since it was myyearbook.com, I'm not sure. That's when I joined it, never really did much with it. That being said, I probably have a profile, a long-forgotten profile, on pretty much every site like that out there. I'd get bored and I'd join up, look for sites that had decent chat functions. If they didn't have chat functions, I'd, just mess around on the forums. And I'd get bored and forget about it. I don't think I had too many weird encounters on myyearbook.com, although I did have a number of weird encounters on many other sites. Though of course, that being said, I don't really use sites like that at all anymore. Every now and again I'll get bored and maybe log into the accounts I do remember and then immediately log back out because they just don't interest me. I have other things to occupy my time. Maybe when I'm actually looking to date someone, I'll get back out there and try and make contact with other human beings, which is a terrifying thought. And with that, I think I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.